and you will register the change in the sky as opposed to on the wall. And that's what's happening in those spaces. Now, there are sort of limits to this, of course, but it's true that that how we perceive is something that has a lot to do with, of course, this nature-nurture. I mean, there is when we see, when we don't see, the physical limits of the creature we are. But there is a lot of learned perception, or I would call prejudice perception as well. For instance, we think that blue is cold and red is hot, when the opposite is true. That's because we have learned it that way in this culture. And then we do things like putting our traffic signals, red and green, and if you think of the lowest response to color, the color spectrum of our seeing, that's right where we have also the red-green color blindness that occurs in the male. So that we're actually putting the traffic signals in parts of the spectrum that are least well seen. Now, we can go into many other kinds of things where different cultures have this create this prejudice perception. One of the most interesting things is that when we learned from Giotto to Cantaletto, and certainly how we do photography, to actually represent 3 dimensions in 2 dimensions, that learning strangely has a cost. There is an illusion that has this, there's a frame of a window in perspective. So it looks like a trapezoid, like this, with panes on a stick, and it is turned. And then the interesting thing is that when we look at that turning, we can't tell if it's turning like this or if it's just going back and forth. We're unable to see the difference. But they took the so-called primitive people, both Pygmies and the Zulus before they had so much contact, who didn't see photographs. In other words, when they were shown a photograph of an elephant, they just saw a tiny elephant. They didn't think it was representing a big elephant. And we showed them the same illusion. They were never able to see the illusion. They saw only what was really happening. So that there is some learning that actually can be set at a disadvantage. It's very odd that this can happen. But I think these ideas of perception are very important, and how we have created a learned perception or a prejudiced perception in our culture, of course, happens with many things, whether or not it's things seen racially or gender or all sorts of things. But just in terms of perceiving some of the things that occur outside, we really fail to understand how much a part of what we behold we are. So this is, again, this thing of, where the me ends and the you begins, this idea of the inside to the outside is very interesting. I certainly have made a career playing off of that and trying to understand it myself. I don't know if I really answered your question, but basically, in this light, I'm changing the light around, so I'm changing your context of vision. That will allow, it makes it possible to change the sky to any color you like. And it's quite interesting to see that, because I think some people are quite surprised by that, and think that somehow the color of the sky has changed. Other question?
Io ai bordi del discorso che stiamo facendo vorrei farle una domanda di questo tipo. Non capisco l'insistenza con la quale lei si rifiuta come scienziato presentandosi come artista, mentre gli elementi del suo discorso, da quelli matematici a quelli geometrici a quelli architettonici, che vanno dalla sua caverna platonica al cosmo, addirittura al cosmo, dicono tutt'altro. Cioè, dicono il contrario di quello che lei dice di non essere. Io tento di dare la risposta, dopo lei mi dice se azzecco la sua personalità oppure no. Io penso di capire che lei fa di tutto per allontanarsi o per non immischiarsi nella diatriba dualistica, cioè di divisione, tra la materia e lo spirito, che dilania da sempre la cultura occidentale dal suo inizio. Ecco, volevo sapere se sbaglio nel definirlo o meno.
Well, I have to say very honestly that I have had the help of very amazing scientists. Richard Walker discovered 2 moons in our planetary system. I was a good friend of Richard Feynman, who I referred to before, writing QED, who was a Nobel Prize winner and also the physical maker of the bomb. And then, of course, I have received a lot of help from the Large Mirror facility at the University of Arizona in terms of the making of this, and of also there are 2 radio scientists that have been very, very helpful to me, because in the top space I've decided to present to you, first of all, as the sun passes over, as you're bathing, you would hear the sound, the radio noise of our sun, and you could also hear the radio noise of Jupiter, very different from the sun, kind of a failed star, or one that never made it. And then also, I selected 2 supernova that are now pulsars, the explosion of Cas-B and also the Crab Nebula, so that you can hear those sounds when they pass over. So, and all this relating to the general background sound of the universe, which is differentiated a little bit from the sound of our galaxy, the Milky Way. So differentiating those have been quite amazing for me to hear that. It reminded me of learning about the sound of whales. I hadn't known that much about these things. So I have to tell you, I am not unaware of science or scientists and count them as friends, but I said this is not a work that really informs science. I don't push science forward, but I do hope to inform a scientist. So in that way, I make that distinction. And certainly, prior to studying perceptual psychology, I got a degree in Boolean algebra, contrasting open sets like Mandelbrot sets with closed sets like Julia sets. So I have some familiarity with the territory, but I take it on almost in a naive fashion as an artist, in a way to kind of come at these gentle koans of perception, kind of questions that are somehow not exactly answerable, but exist in terms of our relationship to this world outside us. In the same way that we often think of nature as being something out there, which is one of man's greatest conceits, to in any way think we are apart from nature, I'm interested in this idea of how we enclose ourselves not only with structure, but with ideas and ways of perceiving. So this is more how artists take on society, and so I've functioned in that world as an artist, not being unaware of many of the things that are going on around me, because I had done aerial photography when I was young. I remained the only one that could remember how to do glass plates for the Naval Observatory. So even today, when they do their glass plate photography, I'm the one that does the emulsions and then hypers them for a higher speed. So this is more, I would look at upon as being technology, as opposed to science, but I certainly am using the fruits of science.
Sì, io volevo chiedere, lei ha parlato molto a lungo di percezione della luce, ma mi sembra che abbia quasi mai affrontato il fattore tempo. Mi sembra che tutte le sue installazioni richiedano un tempo lento per essere percepite in profondità. Ed è la stessa poi cosa che mi chiedo quando lei utilizza la scienza, il che significa una scienza contemporanea, le innovazioni tecnologiche, però poi si rifà a un tempo, chiede al suo spettatore ideale di prendersi un tempo diverso da quello della nostra società. Le ultime installazioni che lei ci ha mostrato ha chiamato in causa antiche civiltà, dove c'era un altro tempo. Allora volevo capire il suo rapporto con il tempo veloce di adesso, con la percezione di questo tempo, perché sia è percezione di luce, ma è anche percezione di tempo. La mia domanda è, il suo spettatore ideale viene, arriva, sta quanto tempo a vivere questo spazio alternativo che lei crea attraverso la luce?
Well, time is one of our greatest constructs. I mean, it's something that we have invented. And I must say that I've thought a lot about that time, not only in the time it takes to perceive my work, also in the time it takes to do a large project. I'm often asked about that by friends too, who kind of wonder how you stay with something over a long time. And one thing I've always thought is that if it takes time, give it time. But also, nothing better to do. I mean, you know, I have the people who worked on the crater were largely Navajo Indians, and I realized in talking to them that when they went into the town of Flagstaff and went around, they had no idea what people were doing. People were running around, looking very busy, but they didn't see any result. And it was very interesting because we were digging this making this crater for kind of looking at different cosmic events. It didn't seem like it was that it would result in anything. And I think that many of the people in Flagstaff think I was crazy. And yet they could understand that because they hear this is space and they felt the sound in it, and they felt what happens with the light at night, and also then when certain alignments would happen. But one of the big things that they talked about, these things that we wear on our wrists, usually, as enforcers, that we enforce our time. Now, it's true that if you take psychological experiments, you put people underground for a long period of times, we don't have solar time. I mean, that is, we don't relate to that. Actually, we're much more closer to a lunar time, which is quite interesting. So that time is certainly a construct. It's something we have made, and then we live within it. And it's perhaps a little bit hopeful, but there are many things that have to do with perception that do take time. I like very much the quality of light coming out of darkness. So when you first come into some pieces, you don't even see anything at all. And then slowly the light comes, because then I get what I call this Sirius light, which is this light that you really feel to be inhabiting the space, and a light that you feel to be present physically. So I have counted on your ability to have patience and stay there to let dark adaptation take that time, but also in the same time you're kind of putting away thoughts about what you have to do next, and when you pick up your children, or all these thoughts that are the same ones that make it difficult to get it to enter meditation too. And so I don't mind it taking that time. In fact, I even like that. People that don't want to do that, they happily leave, and that's I don't have to worry about that. So this isn't for everyone, I realize, and I do count on people taking the patience. If you sit for the pieces at sunset, some of them take about an hour and a half to go through. And I remember when I was a child and came out of that and was going to go into the meeting to sit with the sort of weighty Quakers in meeting, that it seemed like an hour and a half meeting was interminably long, and if it got going good, sometimes they'd go 2 hours, and of course now they try to limit them to an hour. But even that can be a long time for some people. And I don't know quite how to really answer that other than to say that I prefer things that take a little time and that